Hello there and welcome back to my channel, or if this is the first video of mine you are seeing, then welcome. So I've seen many YouTubers do this kind of video where they talk about a couple of eyeshadow palettes in their collection. I've seen some do 5, some do 10, some do more than that, and talk about whether or not they would repurchase those eyeshadow palettes. Now, what I'm going to do to make this kind of more fair, and I'm not just going through and picking palettes myself, I am going to pull up my Tiny Decisions app, and I have a wheel dedicated to all of my eyeshadow palettes, and I'm going to let it pick 10 palettes, and we're going to discuss whether or not I would repurchase these palettes or not. If it picks palettes that are no longer available, we're just going to pretend that you still could purchase them and give my thoughts from there. I thought this would be a great way to revisit past eyeshadow palettes in my collection and kind of think to myself, would I really want to repurchase this or not? I guess this can really go hand in hand with my No Pan Left Behind videos. So let me pull up that app and we'll go ahead and get started. Alright, I have my app right here, so we're going to let it pick 10 eyeshadow palettes. Okay, so we have the Huda Beauty Naughty Nude, Too Faced Happily in Love, Huda Beauty Pastels Rose. Okay, then we have the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes, the Moonlight version. Natasha Denona My Dream Palette. e.l.f. Cosmetics Strawberry Frosted. devinah Cosmetics Mystic Cove. The Kylie Cosmetics, it's her holiday palette from years ago. I don't know the actual name of that palette, so I just put holiday palette. NYX Ultimate Warm Neutrals, and one more. e.l.f. Cosmetics Rose Water Eyeshadow Palette. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab all of those palettes and I'll be right back and we'll discuss them. Alright, I'm just going to grab these palettes. There's no particular order here. I'm not going to go in the order of how they picked them. Honestly, I don't even remember the exact order they were even chosen, so I'm just going to start grabbing and we'll talk about them. So the first one in here, this was from e.l.f. Cosmetics, and this was their collab with Dunkin' Donuts, and this was the Strawberry Frosted with Sprinkles. I think this is a cute little palette. If you like these kind of pinky tones like this is a very soft eyeshadow palette, and for that I do think it's really cute. But I probably wouldn't purchase it again. Now this was limited edition, so you can't purchase it now anyway, but even if you could, I don't know if I'd really reach for it or not. I never reach for these little bite-sized palettes anyway, not enough. Now I do have one more I'm about to talk about in just a second. There's a little bit of a difference for that one, but for this, I think the last time I even reached for this palette was maybe like a year or two ago for Valentine's Day, and I did a look with it, and I haven't touched it since. It's just a little quad that I just don't think about very often, so no, I wouldn't repurchase this if it was still available. Okay, but now we have the next bite-sized quad from e.l.f., and this one is in Rose Water, and I absolutely would repurchase this one because this one is actually a repurchase for me already. I did have this in my collection one time before. Unfortunately, I ended up dropping it on a really hard floor and it shattered to the point where I couldn't repress the shades, and I immediately went out and repurchased it because I do think it's a cute little quad. There is something about it that I really do like. Now, for me, my preferences, I could do without that shade. See, if it was just this little trio right here, that would be absolutely perfect for me and for my preferences. But I think this is a nice shade too. Normally for me, I use it as liner, but I would be happy with it being a little trio as well because I just think those tones are just really pretty. I don't know, and the name Rose Water, it just sounds so sweet, and I don't know. Yes, I would repurchase this, and it absolutely is one that I have already repurchased in my collection. Okay, we got another rose-centered palette here. We have the Huda Beauty Pastels Rose Eyeshadow Palette. I have mentioned plenty of times on my channel that these pastel palettes from Huda Beauty I have always loved. I love when spring comes back around and I pull these palettes out every time and get some really good use out of them. I feel like it's a decent enough use considering the amount of palettes I have. I do try to pull these back out every spring because even though you can wear tones like this all year long, because, you know, I'm wearing a pretty little pop of pastel purple today, not from any of these palettes. This is from the Natasha Denona pastel palette, but I love pastels, especially right now. It's getting into spring, the weather's warming up, at least where I'm at, and I just love spring. Spring is my most favorite season, so when I see these beautiful little pops of pastel shades, I fall in love. I love pastel eyeshadow. If I'm going to wear a colorful eyeshadow, it's more than likely going to be a pastel shade, or even if it's a more intense shade, I'm going to try to dull it down as much as possible to make it look like a pastel, because that's the way I'd want to wear colorful makeup, especially like what I'm wearing today. I'm just wearing one shade all over the lid, and it's a pretty little pop of pastel purple, and I love it. So yes, I would absolutely repurchase this. I wish these palettes were still available because they're just so pretty, and I love that there's actually like a pop of yellow. Let me swatch that yellow for you so you can see. Of course, some of you might have these palettes already, but I just, look how pretty that is. I love it. And I don't really have a lot of yellow in my collection. That's not really an eyeshadow I tend to gravitate towards. So I like that I have kind of a pastel yellow option in case I want to wear yellow one day. Okay, the NYX Ultimate Warm Neutrals. This is quite a newer palette to me. I've actually did a whole review on this palette back in February, and I did even use it to kind of do like my brows, my blush, and my bronzer, and highlighter as well. I did all my face steps with this eyeshadow palette. This is a stunning palette. I have never tried NYX's eyeshadows before, but I'm kind of sad that I haven't, because there's something so pretty about this palette. Yes, it's just a basic warm neutral eyeshadow palette. I know you can get this color story anywhere, probably from any brand for the most part, but there is something really lovely about this formula. Now, the shimmer shades in this particular palette, they're not like those really sparkly, you know, metal looking shimmers. They're very more like the satin shimmers, so I just feel like they look so beautiful on the eyes. Like, here's one right here, and I mean, just, they look so smooth. I think that's one thing about them, like, they're just so simple and just effortless, and that's what I really love about neutral palettes like this. Just really beautiful, simple, elegant looks. That's the type of looks that you can create with this eyeshadow palette. I've loved every look I've created with it thus far, and absolutely I would repurchase this one. It's a really pretty eyeshadow palette. Okay, the next one here is the Devinah Cosmetics Mystic Cove eyeshadow palette. I don't even know if you can still buy this palette or not on their website. I'm not exactly sure, but you might can purchase all of these shades. And if I'm hoping, I don't know if I can be able to really show you the shift with some of these shades. So, you know what, let me just swatch one. We'll swatch this one up here in the corner. Well, you might can see how it's changing from like that gold orangey to like a purple. Let me just swatch one of them and I will show you. Okay, well, look at there. You can see that. There you go. You can definitely see, well, if it would focus on it. There we go. You can definitely see the shifts in that. These are absolutely beautiful shades, and I'm going to be so honest, I cannot tell you the last time I reached for this eyeshadow palette. Honestly, I think I did a video last year in January using this one and another one of Devinah's eyeshadow palettes, and I think that's the last time I've used them. They're really beautiful eyeshadows, and I don't know, this brand makes really beautiful shifty eyeshadows if you are really into indie brands. Now, here's where I'm torn, because a part of me wants to say, yes, I would repurchase this, but then another part of me is saying no, because I don't wear colorful makeup like this. Would I repurchase this particular grouping of shades? No. But I know one time there on their Instagram, they were showing like some more neutral leaning eyeshadows and stuff. I would be more tempted to go for that than I would these really colorful shades. I think these are absolutely beautiful. So while I wouldn't probably repurchase this particular 9-pan, I would absolutely repurchase something from Devinah, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't probably repurchase this particular palette, but I would absolutely love to have some more of their eyeshadows, but maybe the eyeshadows that lean more into the type of makeup that I like. So I hope that makes sense, because they make beautiful eyeshadows. If you love indie brands, if you love colorful, beautiful, shifty shadows, definitely look to their brand. Okay, the next palette is from Makeup by Mario. This is the Ethereal Eyes Moonlight eyeshadow palette, and yes, I would definitely repurchase this palette. I think this is a beautiful eyeshadow palette. It's so sultry looking. Just to look at it, it's so beautiful. It's so sultry. I don't know why these palettes aren't permanent. You might can actually still get this particular palette, but his original Ethereal Eyes palette you can no longer purchase, but they're such beautiful eyeshadow palettes. I don't know why he doesn't make them permanent. I don't know why. but there's just something about them that's just really pretty and special. And I know some people are kind of like hit or miss on these palettes, but because some of the shimmer shades can be more like toppers, kind of like that, but I love a good topper shade because to me, I love placing a matte in my crease and on my lid and then adding a little bit of a shimmer shade over the top. I love looks like that personally, but yes, I would absolutely repurchase this palette. It is so pretty. I'm hoping he kind of continues with these ethereal eyes palettes. I'm hoping that he'll just keep expanding, but I wish he would make them permanent because, come on. There needs to be an option available to repurchase these. Okay, the Kylie Cosmetics, I don't know what this palette's called. It was released in the holidays, probably, oh, I hope I can show you. There you go. It probably like way back, I don't know, it has to be more than 5 years now. It really does. And while this is an absolutely stunning eyeshadow palette, like these tones are gorgeous because they're those really pretty pinky tones, I wouldn't repurchase it because really basically with the exception of that one hot pink shade, which I don't, some of these shades like this come off different on camera, but that's actually like a really beautiful hot pink shade. With the exception of that, you can get this entire palette basically in any of Tarte's eyeshadow palettes. You know? I mean, this is basically a Tarte palette. If you put this in Tarte packaging, I'd believe it was Tarte. I wouldn't think it was Kylie Cosmetics. But I mean, the quality was always beautiful. I don't want to sit here and say it's not. Let me swatch. In fact, let me swatch that hot pink shade for you. The quality was always really beautiful with this eyeshadow palette. I don't necessarily regret purchasing it, but I wouldn't repurchase it for any reason. And now I know that some people are either going to support this brand or not. I mean, and you know what? Fair enough, no matter what you decide. That's going to stain now. Probably was not the best option. Yeah. So, I mean, fair enough as to whether or not you want to support the brand or not. I totally understand. But I do think the palette is pretty. But no, I wouldn't repurchase it. Because, I mean, you can get this color story 10,000 times in Tarte. I'm just going to say. Except for the hot pink. I don't believe Tarte's ever done a hot pink. But, I mean, I'm not into those kinds of neon shades anyway on myself. So that wouldn't personally bother me. But, yeah. You can get this palette 10 times in Tarte. Okay, the Natasha Denona My Dream eyeshadow palette, which this is a very, very pretty eyeshadow palette. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this palette, but I don't believe I would repurchase it. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've used it. I'm hoping that eventually I'll get to it with my No Pan Left Behind that I'm kind of neglecting a little bit because it's already March and I don't have an update ready yet. But honestly, after making my way through that 42 pan Beauty Bay palette, I'm struggling with wanting to even reach for some of those other palettes because putting 42 eyeshadows on your eyes within a certain span of time is just much. And I don't know, after that, I think I just kind of lost motivation to continue, but I'm going to pick it back up. Hopefully I'll have an update at least by the end of this month, I'm hoping. But that being said, I would love for this to come back into my No Pan Left Behind again soon, because then maybe I'd feel differently, but right now there's just something not really getting me with this palette. I don't know why, because it's a beautiful eyeshadow palette, and it does have like a shifty shadow in it, which, I mean, okay, I understand that, of course, indie brands are going to do these shades way better, but for a mainstream brand to place a shade like that in their eyeshadow palette, I think that's amazing. But I don't know, there's just something that doesn't really catch my attention the way some of her others do. Like, I'm thinking about her I Need a Nude, her I Need a Warm, her new Bloom eyeshadow palette, I don't know, or her Glam palette. Some of those just grab my attention more than this one, but I don't really have a reason. I don't know. I feel like I'll be able to really kind of get my thoughts more on this eyeshadow palette when I use it in my No Pan Left Behind. Maybe I'll feel differently when I create some looks with it, but just right now, I would say no. I would not repurchase this particular Natasha Denona palette. That's not to say it's a bad palette. It's a beautiful palette as far as her formula and everything. It's just preference. Okay, the Too Faced Happily in Love eyeshadow palette. The most really perfect, beautiful fall color story. Yes, I would absolutely repurchase this one, oddly enough. Usually I stay away from these kind of cutesy palettes from Too Faced. I just dug my finger right all in that shade. Ew. I will say that normally I kind of stay away from these cutesy palettes from Too Faced. There's nothing wrong with them. Usually they don't get me. Kind of like how they've had the gingerbread palette, the what would they have, a pancake palette one time? Those palettes usually I just kind of like, well, that's cute, but I don't want it. This one's really nice. Yes, it's cute. It's cute little apples, which I have a thing for apples. I really like apples. I just think this is such a beautiful color story. And once fall comes back around, which I mean, you can wear this anytime, but when I look at it, I think of fall. It's just such a beautiful, perfect fall eyeshadow palette, and I can't wait to reach for it again during that time, because I think a palette like this would just definitely get you in the mood for fall. Right now, I'm in spring mode. I want palettes that make me think of spring. This isn't a palette that makes me think of spring, but I absolutely would repurchase it. It's a really good palette, and it's good quality, and it's in their tin packaging that people seem to really love versus their other eyeshadow palettes, so that's a good thing to see. I can't really speak to that really because I normally avoid these palettes, but there was something about this one that caught my attention, and yeah, absolutely, I would repurchase this one. It's just really pretty, and it's perfect for fall. Okay, the last eyeshadow palette is from Huda Beauty. This is the Naughty Nude eyeshadow palette, which is a very stunning eyeshadow palette, and I think it's one of her really beautiful large palettes, but considering that I really love her Rose Quartz palette a lot. Like, I really love that one, and her Icy Nude palette that she released last year. Between the two of them, oh, and her Mercury Retrograde, I don't know if I would actually repurchase this one or not. So I'm gonna say no. I think it's a beautiful eyeshadow palette though. It is a beautiful eyeshadow palette, and it used to be one of my all-time favorite palettes. I think actually there's an older video, I don't know if the video is still up, because a lot of my older videos I've privated because I just, you know, quality. But I think it actually was in one of those videos as a favorite, and it was, and I still think it's a good palette. But now with other palettes of hers that have been released in this same size, I don't think I'd repurchase this one. I really don't. I think it's beautiful, but no, I wouldn't repurchase it. I think her Rose Quartz palette, her Mercury Retrograde, and her Icy Nude eyeshadow palette, those are stunning. And between the three of them, that would be enough for me. Not including her little pastel palettes, I'm just exclusively talking about the larger palettes. I think those are just better and more of what I want in a palette. So no, I don't think I'd purchase that one. While it's a beautiful neutral palette, which I love that about it, of course I do, I still think her other palettes, I like them better, so I would say no on that one. But you know, I hope this was kind of helpful in a way. Like, I love watching these videos because I just feel like, I don't know, I like to see preferences, like whether people change their minds on eyeshadow palettes. Maybe at one point they had a favorite and then eventually something happened or something else came along and they changed their mind on it. And I think it's another way to kind of look at your collection and be kind of more mindful. While I do purchase new eyeshadow palettes, I purchase new makeup. I'm not going to sit here and fib that I'm ever going to be on like a no buy with certain categories. And eyeshadow is just one of those things where I should be on a no buy, but I just can't do it. I love a lot of eyeshadow palettes, even though I like simple eyeshadow, kind of like what I'm wearing today. It's just one shade. I love looks like that. I love a one and done, especially if I can pull it out of an eyeshadow palette. I don't know why, because you can get the same effect from single shadows, but there's something about reaching for an eyeshadow palette that I just prefer. And I have so many beautiful ones in my collection. And some of these, don't get me wrong, even though I said I wouldn't repurchase them, that doesn't mean they're bad palettes by any means. It's just preferences change. Maybe the brand has other eyeshadow palettes that I think are better, or maybe it's simply like the particular color story is not for me now, but I would purchase something else from the brand instead. But, you know, I do hope that you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, I hope you will please consider leaving a like, a comment, or subscribing if you haven't already. I'm getting very close to 1,500 subscribers, and I just want to thank you so very much for subscribing and for being here and watching my videos. It truly, truly, truly means so much to me. I can't even begin to tell you, because I mean, you can be doing anything else with your time, and the fact that you choose to watch me and support my content, it really does mean a lot, so thank you so much. Well, I don't know if any of these palettes are still available. Some of them are, so whatever palettes are available, I will list and link them for you below. They are affiliate links, so if you click there and purchase, I do earn a small commission, and if you choose to do so, thank you so much for supporting me and my channel, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!